That's the city's vessel. We have about 7 more. That vessel has to have a crew of 6. Able-bodied seamen, sea persons.
And the aft net goes down, the aft bar goes down to the deck line when you're standing, and it's like a big colander. You just strain the whole harbor through the boat. And we get everything you can imagine, and things you'd rather not imagine.
The rotting of the piers, especially Manhattan and Brooklyn, the abandonment of those piers, and this is like 90% submerged. It's like an iceberg. You can only see the very top surface. Some of these small vessels, see these boats right now? Boat would be wiped out completely if he hit that. There'll be death, explosion, the whole 9 yards. So these folks provide a much more of a safety aspect than an environmental aspect, but it's protecting us environmentally also by getting this debris out.
This is a radar.
Do you lose anything as you do that?
Sometimes you do. Sometimes smaller pieces of debris you will lose some. It's like when you sweep the kitchen floor, you get most of it and there's a little bit that won't go in the dustpan. So we get most of it. 2 marine radios, a compass. This screen here is a global positioning system, which is a great item.
You can see it outlines the Newtown Creek area, right?
Fine. Now we're going to go up the creek, I suppose?
John, that was agreed to?
Yes.
John and Jim?
Yes.
Do you have the paddles? You don't want to be up the creek without a paddle. Oh! I had to.
Like when you're going to parallel park right alongside the dock. So
But the captain is out there and the ship is moving.
he's in remote control. He has a set of auxiliary controls. But see, when he's outside, Tommy's in here. But the CSO committee requested a trip up the Newtown Creek in order to see exactly how CSO maybe impacts or how this vessel would work during a CSO condition. And of course, the Newtown Creek Monitor Committee, there's members on that CSO committee, and they invited other members of the committee, and that's why we have a joint committee ship here. Guess we disturbed it.
Yes. He was smart enough to get out of the way.
The captain's asking permission of the bridge keeper to raise the bridge now. So that's part of his procedure.
Greenpoint to inbound tug.
So they have to pick up the bridge for you to come out?
Yeah.
Greenpoint to tug, call the Pulaski.
That's us.
That's the Cormorant to the Pulaski Bridge.
Yeah, this is Greenpoint. You're gonna need to open it up, Pulaski.
So that's the first bridge over the creek, the Pulaski Bridge?
That's correct.
I'm going to need an opening then.
You're calling the Navy boat, that's a negative. This is midshipman training cruise. We're going to New York for a port call over.
Receive, thank you. Welcome to the...
Security call, range is westbound at execution.
The waterway looks pretty good for a rainstorm last night, right? I haven't seen too much of anything.
See what's behind the booms.
Well, that's right. We'll see what's behind the boom. So I guess the booms are doing their thing.
What's going on in the waterways. We've talked about it for so long, and nobody's really, that I know of, gotten a close-hand view of, you know, all the problems we have and seeing it from the water. We're always seeing it from the lands and feeling its consequences. So, pollution problems has been the mobile oil spill and its effect on Newtown Creek, and they've maintained that it hasn't been that bad, but you know, it doesn't look that bad on the surface, but who knows what's going on underneath, so it's good to see. But we also see things that we didn't know that were here as we're going down the creek, so that's another thing, to find out how they got here and who gave them permission and why this is happening, because Greenpoint is trying to build up, and I want to know how these things got here without anybody's approval that we know of.
How far he wants.
Kosciuszko Bridge that we're about to go under. That's the BQE that joins Brooklyn and Queens Expressway. Now, on the edge of that bridge property begins the Phelps Dodge property. Been tagged by the state DEC as a number 2 polluted plant due to the fact that over the years the site was used for smelting copper, and prior to that it was used for other types of pesticides and other materials, and a good deal of it was used, dumped in to fill up to the bulkhead line of the creek. The high water line used to go way up land when this was virgin land, so all of this is filled in ground, and a great deal of it was filled in by the waste of the smelting process, and that's what makes it polluted. There's a great deal of undesirable material in the soil, and the buildings are all also full of asbestos piping, so the whole site is a very, very extensive polluted affair. It will cost millions to correct it.
Of course, they're across the water, they're that.
That's a pollution boom that's been recently put in. Now we're going around the bend, and around inside there is Maspeth Creek.
Boats come and pick up floatable material that comes out of the CSO and gets collected in that boom. And at the head of Maspeth, when he comes around again, you'll be able to see the CSO that discharges here and produces or distributes those floatables to the water body. And anything that's floating on the surface when the water comes out of the CSO gets coming out into open water. By combined sewer systems, which means the wet weather flow goes into the same sewers that carries the dry weather flow to the plant. And the wet weather flow is a lot more quantity than the dry weather flow. The sewers are designed to carry it to a certain point, but the plant can't treat it. And so there are these overflow points at different points in the system to give it relief so that you don't have to build a treatment plant that would be capable of treating, I don't know, 600 or 700 million gallons instead of 300 million gallons a day. Right. That is the outfall. It actually extends quite a ways through.
Water quality may not be as clean as it could be. You have to understand that it evaporates also. So what is evaporating is possibly fairly dirty stuff coming into the atmosphere, which would affect our air and our lungs from breathing the air. And of course it's connected to the East River, which is a main body of water, and that's an important issue for all of water quality.
The standards for the harbor, based on the current boats, commercial boats, calls for much deeper channels than they currently have in the harbor, and they've been trying to make a plan that they can actually implement that'll enlarge the channels and maintain New York as a major port on the eastern seaboard.
Major project.
It is, and the disposal of the sediment, the disposal of the dredge material is the critical thing.
Right. And the point is that the sediment is so bad in the Newtown Creek itself, and they felt that if they could decontaminate that, they could decontaminate anything.
Right. Newtown Creek was one of the few sediments that, even under the old rules for disposal, it was unable to be disposed of in the ocean. Formerly, all the stuff in the harbor they could dispose of in the mud dump off of the New Jersey coast, but Newtown Creek didn't qualify for that as long ago as the 70s.
They were thinking of commingling also the sludge material years ago.
Decrease the concentrations.
Remember that?
I don't remember that. The creek is rated by the state standards for fish survival, not for breeding, not for any population, not for recreational use. It's only that it has to have enough oxygen so that fish can survive if they happen to come in. And during the summertime, when you get up a little further, it doesn't meet that. Ready for recreational use. That's not one of the designated uses. It's not viewed by the state as being appropriate for recreational use because of the nature of the shoreline mainly. So it's the state has standards that are set based on what they believe is the best use of the water body. And whether it's swimming, whether it's boating, whether it's shell fishing, or whether it's nothing recreational at all. And this one is rated SD, which is the lowest classification they give, and that means that nothing human happens here. I mean, recreationally speaking. I'm not sure which comes first. Whether the water quality is bad because of the use, or whether the use is such because of the water quality. I mean, we saw articles and doing some little research about the turn of the century, where newspaper articles talking about the poor quality of the water in Newtown Creek and the smells, and it is an industrial waterway. It was an area that was settled by the Dutch when the British drove them out of New York. They found safe ports here, and they settled here.
But that's how we got Greenpoint. And as ships, as they were coming in, that was part of their visual impact when they saw the green area, that Greenpoint, and they knew they were coming into the creek too.
And Greenpoint still maintains a much different atmosphere than lower down in the creek area surrounding the English Kills. It's a much more friendly atmosphere than it is further down.
That's why I would like to have seen that, but the industry around here, there's nothing very pretty to look at unless major changes were done. Well, some of the industries perhaps will not stay where they're at. Some of them look like they're ready to collapse. So if that would be the case, and the city could take over the property or purchase the property and beautify it, for heaven's sakes, and have some open space for the area. We have the least open space throughout the city.
And the current plan for waterfront development that the city has does not include any recreational development in Newtown Creek. This is designated as industrial waterfront, and so that in terms of developing to meet the plan for waterfront revitalization, industrial development is what's seen as being located here.
Greenpoint's almost a peninsula, really. We're surrounded almost all by water. And we don't touch it anywhere.
I've been out on this water on boat a lot of times, and I always enjoy being out on it, whether or not it's suitable for recreational use.
Apparently, in this area of the creek in particular, there's very little movement, so there's very little oxygen that can actually...
Well, this area actually is the better part because it's deeper, it's closer to the East River, and when the tide comes up, all the water from the East River comes through here. When you get back into the branches where there's less volume, English Kills, the East Branch, Maspeth to some extent, although Maspeth is short enough so that it still gets some flushing, but it's very shallow. If you come at low tide, Maspeth will be just mud. The sediment is apparently contaminated. The requirements now for disposal of the material require that it pass a bioassay test because it would be disposed of in waters where the biological organisms are important. and it can't pass that test now, and so it would have to be treated and disposed of on land, and depends on the criteria for the disposal point, what kind of treatment would have to be given to it first. But it also requires that somebody have the authority and the responsibility to dredge it, and there is nobody except the Corps of Engineers, I guess, that has that authority.
No matter where you would go with your little kayak or rowboat, there's nowhere to stop and have an enjoyable picnic or anything. It would just be a matter of coming in and going out. And if you recall, we were told when there was a plan to come up the river here by kayaks and rowboats, that no one should put their hands in the water. Remember that?
The sediments near the CSOs, we know, are in large part discharged by the CSOs, which means they're sewage solids. And I wouldn't put my hand in sewage solids without gloves on. So I treat it the same way. Now out here, I think this water is more characteristic of the water in the East River than it is of the water near the ends of the CSOs. So the water itself here, particularly at this time of the year, is probably fairly decent. It probably has the required amount of oxygen in it. It's not designated for swimming. I don't think the East River is designated for swimming or fishing. I don't think at this point.
That was a promise DEP made to the community when they were going to build the plant. And especially they're talking about secondary treatment, they were telling us, oh, you will have swimmable areas. So one of the ladies that used to bring that up to the DEP is already gone. And she said, you lied to us. You said we would be able to swim in the river. And she never swam, and I don't know who will and when. In the environmental impact statement, it says probably by 235 to 45, they will be increasing it. And they're taking so much additional land and explaining to us because the depth of the tanks are not going as the earlier plan, that they need 17 plus acres. We have more acreage for waste than we do for parks. And even to consider making this a larger plan, I think is ludicrous. I think it's an entire injustice to the community, and it's an environmental injustice. And I really feel very strongly, and I always bring up these things, and I'm hoping somewhere along the line somebody is going to listen. And of course, there's this NIMBY thing, not in my backyard. Unfortunately, we have all of this in our backyard. So it's like, don't tell me it's NIMBY for this particular community. Get out of here. This is, to me it's like unlawful. And I don't understand why there's no statute of limitation for this upgrade of the plant. I really don't. There's got to be some loophole somewhere.
I mean, we're going to make our site as nice, clean, and safe as possible. What you see is the industry that's going to remain. It's part of the way that the canal is zoned, and it's actually making use of waterfront property for an industrial reason. I know what you're saying. It's unsightly, but we're going to just give you access to it. What we're doing is you ask for access to the waterfront.
Who asked?
The community asked for it.
All right.
The community asked for it. The NCMC committee asked for it.
Right.
The NCMC committee is in the coast community. That's the problem.
I can't help you with that, though. I can't help you with that part. We've been told to talk to Ken Fisher's community members,
Right.
who are members of Community Board 1, who show up monthly at the NCMC committee.
Right.
The artists that were chosen were given several areas to work on. The one area that they chose to work on was reconditioning the waterfront for public access. We've embraced that, and we've allowed them to develop designs. And next month, at the next month's meeting, you're going to see some of the things that they've come up with. And maybe the comments that you have now will be passed along. But we're going to make that side of the site attractive, safe. What you see is what you choose to see, or existing.
Well, yeah, I mean,
What were the other areas that the artists were directed that they could look into?
They were looking at the fence line, they were looking at the visitor center, and they were looking at the waterfront access in the back of the support building here. Those were the three areas we felt that could be done early and could have an immediate effect on the community's impact towards the plant, as opposed to waiting towards the end and getting something put in at the very, very end. What we intend to do is restore the face of the property so it's structurally sound, and the artist has been commissioned, and George, the artist, is going to work this in in such a manner that it's going to give waterfront access, it's going to give access to the water itself for either lounging or fishing or just looking, and we hope to accomplish that early on. How much? The entire perimeter.
It's really, I mean, we have such a beautiful little community. I would really love to see the waterfront developed in a way that, you know, my children and people after them can really enjoy this. I mean, what do we work for if not to have reclaim some of this beautiful little space that we have here, Keith? I've always thought that this side of the city gets, you know, the short end of the stick. And I think that 20 years of being involved, maybe it's helping. I see things changing. I see inroads being made now that I hadn't seen for 10 years. Hopefully we can keep it going. Some of the groups on the north side and some of the groups in Greenpoint have been very diligent in getting things moving. I think that we just haven't hit the politicians hard enough. That's probably the place to do it. There used to be piers that could be used. I mean, when I was 20 years ago, when I was a teller in the bank, we used to go to the Noble Street Pier and eat lunch, you know? There were benches there, and it was nice. Now, all that's closed off. There's no access. You know, people have to sneak into, climb fences, cut through chain link to get to, you know, to get to something they should have access to. They pay taxes, you know? I don't know.
It is falling down. There's no development whatsoever. On the Manhattan side over here, we see little pocket parks along the way. There's trees and greenery. The bulkhead is being taken care of. The city is kind of like made Brooklyn, New York over here. There's nothing that we can even say is beautiful about our waterfront. And it's a shame. It's the same body of water touching both sides. We've got a lot of new groups coming in and a lot of new people moving into Greenpoint. And I think that people are looking at the waterfront as a viable place of pleasure. You know, it's virtually untouchable at the moment. But I think that once we start, you know, looking and seeing, I think if we advertise more, like Manhattan is getting all of the benefits of this body of water that we share. And I think that we have to start screaming for our own, you know, equal rights here. They're entitled to it. Why shouldn't we be? The city should be made to maintain some of these things. They're taking measures to stop the dumpers, and I think that's an important part of starting to clean it up. Fish life is coming back. It's sustaining life now because the fish are running through here. So I think that a cleanup is happening. It's just very slow. It took a long time to get this way. It's not going to clean up overnight. Well, I'd like to be able to walk along the waterfronts. You know, I'd like to have promenades over here. I'd like to walk with my grandchildren over there and, you know, come down on a hot summer's night and just sit down by the water. It's very relaxing. Water is very refreshing. Even if you can't swim in it, you can at least look at it and appreciate it. We have to do something with the garbage. We all understand that. We're not going to stop making garbage. But putting it into, you know, viable residential areas like we have is not the answer. I think each community is going to have to take their own fair share. Greenpoint already has too many.
wonderful idea. It should be a water taxi stop. That should connect to all the other historic points along the East River, Harlem, and Hudson Rivers, so that it would go around the whole estuary and people would get an idea of what the waterway is all about, that they're surrounded by water. How's that? Greenpoint, we're looking at Oak Street, Noble Street, Greenpoint Avenue.
Going over